Well,
Whoa.
thanks for everybody's patience. So, Janique, Tom.
Yes.
I'm going to start with Janique just for a sec. So your job as producer, of course, the term producer can mean 100 different things. So in your case, what did it mean? What did you do? When did you do it? What do you think about it now?
Am I on?
Yeah, use this.
Hi. Great question. I also really quickly want to just, if there's any librarians in the room, I would love if you feel comfortable standing up or raising your hand for us so that we can give you a little applause too. As you said, it could mean 100 different things, and I think I wore 100 different hats, and I am still wearing maybe 50 of them or so. But I feel really lucky to have collaborated so closely with our director-producer, Kim A. Snyder. We Zoomed with the first 3 librarians who you see interviewed in the film. In 2021, Kim had seen an article about the Kraus list and this group of librarians who were speaking up about it. So we Zoomed for a few months, and it became clear really quickly that we needed to get down there. So then I switched hats from development and kind of researching the story and fundraising to being in the field, and Kim and I spent about 3+ years together, traveling in Texas and Florida, Louisiana, New Jersey, Zooming with librarians in as many states as I could, and then just being there throughout the process, and cultivating relationships with all of our collaborators, our librarians, and everyday citizens who are standing up for the fight against censorship, and just still going, still fighting.
Yeah, I mean, not to be flippant, but if people are looking for exposure of children to pornography, it's very easy to see where it happens. It's online. I mean, and it's interesting that there's which is really pornography, and which actually has a debilitating effect on a lot of young kids, in fact. And so it's hard to know just where it's coming from. I mean, obviously, any kind of gender diversity is threatening, for one thing. And I didn't hear anybody really make a case for the banning of books having to do with African American history or culture.
Yeah, I think Suzette, who you see, who says in the end, this is not a communist nation, you do not get to choose our reading materials, she tackles that very directly in her town in Llano, Texas, where the judges came in and said we must remove these books under that umbrella word of pornography, which has been so successfully weaponized. It's a word that is, like you said, it's scary. I don't want kids to access pornography either. I'm on that team, but it's being used in a way where you can then manipulate that meaning to even apply to a book like How to Be an Anti-Racist, the history of the KKK, and all of these other books that are very specifically by authors of color or have main characters, interracial relationships in the book Out of Darkness that we've seen. All Boys Aren't Blue is by a Black queer author, and in that book it has kind of the trifecta of things dealing with sexuality, race, and a coming-of-age story with sexual assault. And you can't say that that's pornographic without being a deeply troubled human being who somehow found pornography in those 3 things that I just said. And so it's just a complete weaponization of a convenient word that strikes real fear in a lot of people who believe they're fighting for something and not realizing, like Courtney Gore, the school board member, who sees and has that change of heart, that it was never there.
Yeah, and obviously it sort of comes as an agenda item from someplace else also.
Yeah, I think that's why it's so important now, the thing that our librarians are always saying, and that I share in any room like this, that even if we're in a place where, like I'm very grateful to have grown up here and been in an environment where this is not happening as rampantly as we see in the film, but it's just so important to stay engaged on a hyper-local level, because the people who care about or seem to care about the books, or who are making decisions about books and libraries, are clearly driven by a much larger agenda. They are working within an architecture that has now revealed itself in many ways in this year since the film came out. So whoever gets to make decisions about books and libraries, pay attention, stay engaged, keep listening, get those jobs. You know, like those jobs aren't closed off to all of us. We can all run for school board, we can all run for library board, we can go to those meetings, and showing up is more important now than ever before.
And of course, there was a very organized effort for conservative family people to run for school boards. I mean, it was organized, and there's not a similar effort on the left or among progressives to do the same thing. I mean, it's you can take the parallel of the anti-abortion movement also. 50 years of hard, relentless organizing, demonstrating, you know, being outside of abortion, and it just was relentless, and it was successful. And so it unfortunately requires that kind of sustained effort, and a film like this plays an important role. And of course, also Secretary of Defense Pete Hegseth also has been pulling books out of the libraries at the military academies as well, and included the autobiography of Martin Luther King, Maya Angelou, Toni Morrison. Mein Kampf was not pulled out, apparently, of the Annapolis library. And, you know, my last editorializing, maybe hopefully it's the last, is that also there's no attention being paid to the fact that illiteracy is growing very rapidly among young people, up to 35% in some places. And so the real question is how to get kids reading.
Yeah, and that's what librarians are very good at and are trained to do. And one of the things that is sad to see is when these bad bills make it into certain states, and there's not only the books that are pulled because they were on X, Y, or Z list, there's also this long-term chilling effect that we can't even really quantify yet, like the effect that's going to have on generations to come. There's books that are being pulled out of elementary schools and being moved to middle school. There's books being pulled from middle schools and being moved up to high school, and high school books that are disappearing. So what are the kids reading? You know, like, and having material that is interesting to them, that is already age appropriate because a librarian selected it and that is their specialty, to select reviewed age appropriate materials for the kids in the schools. But there's a huge loss right now happening because of that. But I think that in states like Vermont and other states, we're seeing freedom to read bills that have been passed. There's some where there's still more work to be done to add in more protection for librarians and to fight that ability to quickly criminalize librarians and teachers for materials that ultimately will not stand up in court as pornographic, will not stand up in court as obscene, but that can destroy someone's life in the meantime and cost an absurd amount of money. So it's important to, you know, I think there's 10 bills in different states right now. Rhode Island just passed one of the best ones that we've seen, but there's a lot of states that are fighting to pass those, and it's on all of us collectively. I think your film speaks to that so well, like to actively protect our First Amendment rights, and that's critical for us to keep fighting for, because if we don't, we see how quickly they can be trampled.
Yeah, and the message going out, books, I mean, somewhat subliminally, books are bad. Places where books are subversive.
Yeah, or that schools are. It was a very concerted effort to create that distrust around the books, and librarians as usually one person in a school, and you can create that fear and stoke that within the community so that the school then is a place of fear and panic. And now we've seen what has escalated with the Department of Education being dismantled and attacked. So that fear can just spread so rapidly, and books and critical thinking and access to information and diversity of perspectives is exactly the thing that fights it. So it makes sense that they're trying to suppress that, but we need to stay active and utilize the rights that we have now to access those things, and make sure that other people don't just sit complacently with that access. Make sure that other people can as well.
And likewise, if the books having to do with LGBT kids are bad, then LGBT kids are bad. I mean, so it has a huge ripple effect. I'm going to go to Tom in just a second. Among the librarians that are here, have any of you dealt with any book banning pressures or issues? No? I mean, I've read that there has been some pressure in Vermont.
I'm a retired librarian from Houston, Texas. And I've been retired 7 years, and it was nothing like this.
Yeah.
And it changed so quickly. So my prayer is that with a concerted effort, it can reverse as quickly. Because when I left 7 years ago, my school got a $50,000 bonus because I was a certified librarian. That came from the Houston Independent School District. And now people are going to jail or being threatened with their lives. And so it wasn't like that, just a blink of an eye. And I really believe that with a concerted effort, and I'm so thankful that you ended on some positive notes, because we have to be aware of that. And there are positive things we can do. So let's make a concerted effort, and I think it can feel the other way.
I saw a hand up here.
Yeah, I just want to say that although Vermont might be doing okay, the authors of children's books are actually suffering quite a bit. And I know you probably couldn't deal with that topic because you focused on the librarians, but many authors, people say, oh, your book was banned, that's great. And in fact, that's not great, because you want children to read your stories, and your voices are silenced. My book was actually on that book that was banned from
Granbury.
the Granbury list, the Krause list. And there are other authors I know in the state of Vermont who have lost income from not just the sale of books, but being invited to schools to speak.
Yeah.
And all those speaking opportunities are gone.
Can you say the name of your book?
Yeah.
And your name?
Oh, sorry, I'm Jennifer Gennari. It's my mix-up Very Blue Summer. It's about a girl in Vermont who has 2 moms.
Sure. Well, a lot of kids do.
Well, we very much invite authors into the conversation. I'll just share very quickly, we're going to be opening in theaters nationwide, and we're also going to be doing our broadcast premiere in January on PBS. And as we do that work, our impact campaign is really interwoven into all of these stops. We want to have more town hall style conversations. We would love to have authors in the room, so please do share your information afterwards. But we want to be having these conversations with librarians, educators, and bringing people in like, Courtney's to be able to come in the room. I think that's just such a great example of somebody who says it's okay to change your mind. It's okay to realize that something wasn't what you thought it was. And
Yeah, she's great, that character.
yeah, we want to foster more of that community conversation each stop of this tour. So you can keep in touch with us at at The Librarians Film on all social media, thelibrariansfilm.com, thelibrariansfilm@gmail. So just remember the Librarians Film part and you will find us. So thank you.
Okay. So a couple questions for Tom. You will, I'm sure, continue to talk to Janika a little bit as well. So Tom, the genesis of your film, how did it come to be?
I was approached by the Annenberg Foundation, some of you may have heard of it, to work on a film for a new memorial that is going to be built, at least we hope it will be built, to fallen journalists on the National Mall in Washington. And I was delighted to be asked to make this film and work with what's called the Fallen Journalist Memorial Foundation. Now, you didn't see on the screen and the closing credits any mention of the Fallen Journalists Memorial Foundation because we were asked by the foundation to take it off. Why? They are afraid that they will not receive the final permits and licenses and so forth to construct this memorial, for which they've raised quite a lot of money. And it's right at the base, it's right near the Capitol, right near the, the horticultural, it's right near the Smithsonian. Let's hope the Smithsonian will remain there. They did not want to be connected with this film publicly for fear that the National Park Service, the Interior Department and otherwise would pull the permits. So that's both how it started and where we are. There's a bit of an irony here. I learned that to put anything on the National Mall, which is as sacred a place, non-religious in this country as we have, you literally need an act of Congress. House, the Senate, and the President has to sign it. And there is an act of Congress authorizing this memorial, which we hope will be built in the next couple of years. The irony of it is, it was signed by the President of the United States, Donald Trump, in the first term. Now, part of what the concern was with taking the name of the foundation off of this film was that if Trump were to connect this film to the foundation, he might prevent the memorial from ever being built. This film will be used in classrooms, we hope, in the interpretive center and elsewhere to sort of send the message that we tried to convey in this short film, which is the importance of the First Amendment, the courage it takes for journalists, both local and otherwise, international, to go out and do their jobs, and the increasing dangers that they are under. We believe that the legislation was buried in some several hundred-page bill that was signed, so the president didn't even know he was signing it. But there's a real concern that if the film was connected to the foundation, the memorial will not be built. Just a couple of other points, and I know it's late and everyone wants to go home and go to sleep, and it's already past my bedtime. But there are certain words that they were concerned that we shouldn't use, at least until the memorial is built. Among those words is democracy. So that's where we are. A long answer to a short question.
Yeah. Maybe the new Trump is like an imposter. Have you thought about that? Could be.
Anyway, but I also want to congratulate you on your film, you and your whole team. I mean, it's just a wonderful film. I'm delighted to hear you have distribution.
Thank you. For each of you, do you have another project in mind?
Yes, I'm working on 2 right now, and like some filmmakers, I don't want to jinx it, but, oh, excuse me. The answer, yes, I'm working on a couple of them now, raising some money, it'll deal with nuclear safety, and it will, well, maybe I should stop with that. But it will not be a short, it'll be a feature film like the film, Jay, that you invited me to show here a few years ago,
Yeah.
Dateline Saigon,
Yeah.
which did,
And had quite a wonderful life for itself.
yeah. And it's still out there, still.
Has it had television broadcasts?
Yeah, Dateline Saigon was a feature film that I directed a few years ago. It won the Best Documentary here. It's on Amazon Prime, it's on Apple TV Plus, it's on Canopy, Criterion, and a bunch of channels.
Cool. Ginny?
Our next project is the impact campaign of this film, and really what we're focused on and raising money for right now. One of the initiatives that we're raising for is when we go into our educational distribution, which is when schools and libraries, public libraries, school libraries are able to access the film, is so that rural areas, and I was laughing on the phone because I'm from a town of 1,500 people, and they said the criteria was 25,000 people or less, and that's a city. But we want to make sure that libraries have access to the film, and that typically in that phase it can't be used as a fundraising tool, but one of the things that we want to do is allow libraries to use the film to host events, bring folks in to learn about their programs, and support the work that they're doing, especially in this year when the IMLS cuts that happen this fall is when your local museums and libraries spending is really just being cut off at the knees. So, yeah.
What town are you from in Vermont?
I'm from Waitsfield.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Thank you both for 2 extraordinarily effective documentaries. Really well done, very moving, very timely. We are at a time in our history where we need this. If I may, I'd like to share a little bit of history connected with your wonderful film about libraries. This is a happy story in that the attacks by citizens groups on public libraries, and especially school libraries, kicked into high gear in 1946 and ran until the middle of the 50s. It was particularly vicious in the period of 49 and 50. That was in part connected with the Who Lost China hysteria. It was very much part of the Cold War. I'm an old guy. I was a kid at the time, but I was intimately connected with the library profession's resistance, which was ultimately successful. The library system in this country, public libraries and especially school libraries, were under real attack that was quite scary, and it had some effect. And the literature on this shows the worst effect, in fact, was not the removal of books from the shelves, but librarians becoming very, very cautious about what new books they ordered, for fear that it would incite pressure. The happy news is that the American Library Association in 1939 passed its first statement on intellectual freedom, set up a committee called the American Library Association Committee on Intellectual Freedom. And the reason I know all this is my father was the chairman of that committee from 1948 to 1950 when he was the librarian of the Cooper Union in New York City. So I grew up with this at the kitchen table night after night after night. And I want to thank you in part in memory of my dad, who's been dead for 25 years, but his generation of librarians and the trustees of libraries, big important issue there. The libraries have boards of trustees. Those people, by and large, hung tough, resisted what we call McCarthyism, and the library profession came out from the mid-50s with intellectual freedom more or less intact.
Something
Little footnote that's going to be uncomfortable for some of you. The attacks don't just come from the right.
Yeah.
They also have come from the left, or what we call the left. And there are people who we call progressives who have been advocating the removal of books they don't like in the same spirit of censorship that the right-wing people that you've shown in your film. So be aware, there is another form of censorship that this campus has experienced, and that is the censorship of the heckler's veto. When a speaker is shouted down and prevented from speaking because certain members of the audience don't want to hear what that speaker has to say, that is censorship. Middlebury College, I'm a retired professor from this beloved institution, is not entirely innocent on the issue of the heckler's veto. Most colleges and universities now are not Simon Pure in protecting the freedom of speech and the freedom of intellectual activity when it comes from voices that the majority of the campus doesn't want to hear. May I end with my favorite quote from George Orwell: "If liberty means anything at all, it means the liberty to say something other people don't want to hear."
Thank you very much for that. I think also it's important for people that want to know what they can do. The state of Vermont is not particularly supportive of libraries financially. I don't know if any of the librarians want to comment on that, but my understanding is that the state does not provide direct funding to Vermont libraries, and it's one of only 6 states that does not do that. And so it's something we can really focus on, because as you mentioned, the Institute for Museum and Library Services essentially has been terminated. So the need to strengthen local libraries, either with direct town funding, additional town funding, or to lobby through your legislators for direct funding to Vermont libraries is very important to think about, I think.
May I say something?
Yes, please.
The administrative officers of Castleton State College proposed that the library be disbanded.
Right, last summer.
And that the thing that people in state realized is that the board for Castleton was not answerable to the state legislature. They were simply answerable to a chancellor who was chosen by them.
Yeah, but that got turned around, as I understand it, at least to a
We'll
point,
see.
by protests. Students came actually, even during their summer vacation, to protest the closing of the state college libraries. Okay, one more question, and then I think probably, yes, it's time to pull out the sleeping bags.
I just wondered if the banning of books is just in public schools, or does it affect private schools as well?
Yeah, I think censorship comes in many forms, and it is something that our librarians have experienced. When I say our, I mean in the film who we worked with, in public schools, in public libraries, and we have heard stories from private institutions as well. And the thing that we're seeing a lot now is academic librarians who would work in colleges and universities. That was kind of the safe haven if they had been pushed out of their school and public libraries. And that space now, since January, with all of the anti-DEI bills and actions, has really been impacted. So that kind of safe haven that a lot of them had found is now also under attack in many ways.
Okay, Janique, thank you so much. Tom, always a pleasure.